Let me illustrate that principle with an example that might make some sense for some of you. Many years ago, when I was teaching Institute up at the Logan Institute of Religion, adjacent to the campus of Utah State University, one of my assignments there for 4 years was to work with seminary pre-service. So I would help train people who wanted to look at potentially teaching seminary full-time for the church. And then I would go and observe and make recommendations for who I felt should get hired. There were, on many occasions during those 4 years, there were people who would come to the office and say, "Brother Griffin, my patriarchal blessing tells me I'm going to be a seminary teacher," or "My mission president gave me a blessing as I left the mission telling me that I would be a seminary teacher, that I should pursue seminary," or I have this impression that I need to teach seminary. The problem is out of the Logan Pre-Service Center, we would only generally hire somewhere between 2 to 5, maybe 6 in a really good year back then, full-time, in an entire year. And I would have lots of these people coming in saying this was what needed to happen. So here I found myself with a person at point A saying that they needed to be a full-time seminary teacher for whatever reason. And so what I learned after the first 1 or 2 years of going through a process and then watching what happened and realizing this person isn't going to be a full-time seminary teacher, and watching some of them be devastated by that and feeling let down, like, well, I thought the Lord told me this is what He wanted me to do. And I learned the difference between point Z and point B. Often what happens is the Lord gives you instructions, as Casey was talking about, and this isn't just in occupation, this could be in relationships. You could start down a road with somebody in dating and think, oh, I'm being inspired, this is good. And you get further down the road, and then something happens, and it doesn't put you at the point Z you anticipated. The reality is God gives us instructions to say, I want you to pursue this. I want you to go here. I want you to go after this goal, whatever it may be. Now that it's been many years after having been in that pre-service setting, I've talked to some of the students that I had back then who didn't get hired, who ended up in other careers. And in every case, I ask them, did we make the right decision? And in every case of people that I've talked to, they've said, yes, I am so glad that things have worked out the way they have, that I didn't get hired full-time. But wow, the things I learned through that process, I use them all the time. The Lord was shaping me through that experience to accomplish what I needed to accomplish that I didn't know was what I needed to accomplish back then, because I thought it was leading to full-time seminary employment, not the Lord preparing me for something different that He had in my future. That, to me, is the biggest overarching lesson of this whole Zion's Camp experience. You've got these, in some cases, guys who are just really exciting to go out for a fight, which, by the way, clarification, Joseph Smith, from the outset, I don't know that his intent is to go out and start an offensive campaign. The problem is Governor Dunklin had told them, if you get enough support, I'll call out the state militia to restore the people to their lands, but then I'm going to call the militia off, and you have to have people in place to defend them. So it was more of a defense mission rather than an offensive campaign to go and say, let's start a war. It was more, once we get them back on their lands, we need people there to help defend them so that the same thing doesn't just end up happening again. You'll notice, by the way, that there are a variety of reasons why a person goes from point A to B to C, and sometimes end up getting derailed and not make it to the point Z that they had in mind, or in some cases that the Lord had prepared for them. You'll notice in verse 31, behold, this is my will. Ask, and ye shall receive. But men do not always do my will. Because of this power of the agency given to us, sometimes we do our will rather than his. One of my favorite C.S. Lewis quotes is where he says, in the end, there are really only two kinds of people. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, thy will be done. Because he's not going to force us. So you'll notice, just because God gives revelation or gives direction or empowers us to do something doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to happen, because sometimes we don't follow through on our side. You'll notice he told them to ask in verse 31. Look at verse 35. Therefore, as I said unto you, ask and ye shall receive. There it's repeated. So between that, what's happening between those two bookends? He's telling them to go out and recruit and try to get 500 volunteers. And if you can't get 500, get 300. And if you can't get 300, well, get what you can. Look now at verse 36. All victory and glory is brought to pass unto you through your diligence, faithfulness, and prayers of faith. I love that he says, I'm not going to just guarantee all of these outcomes. You have to be diligent, faithful, and offer prayers of faith in order for the desired outcomes to occur.